Using just 2 to 3 balls of yarn, you can crochet this gorgeous supernova blanket. Hey there, I'm Jess from Making Do Crew, and this pattern is part of our 3 Days to Done collection. In this tutorial, I'll show you how easy it is to crochet this star baby blanket in just a few days. But if you prefer a larger version for yourself, I'll also teach you how to make that. I'm about to walk you through all the techniques and skills you'll need to make your own supernova blanket, but you'll also want to follow along with the written pattern to know the exact stitch counts that you need for each round. All the pattern links are right below this video. Today I'm going to be using Lion Brand Mandala Gradient yarn, which as you can see does so much of the color changing for us. It really creates that beautiful starburst effect within our star blanket, and you can actually avoid weaving in very many ends at all because you're just going to need 2, maybe 3 balls of this yarn. Of course, you can also use solid color yarn for this project and just change colors manually. What you're looking for is a category 4 worsted weight yarn. This is on the heavier side, so you're not looking for a light worsted. If you want to replicate the exact dimensions of this blanket, you're looking for something that's on the heavier side. And if you would like some yarn substitution ideas, I've got them listed out in the pattern. And if you'd like to spend a little more time on your blanket to make it a little bit bigger, then you'll also want to have 1 ball of yarn that is the same weight as your other 2 color striping balls of yarn. So here are a few that are a great match for the weight of Mandala Gradient. This is Lion Brand Heartland, Vanna's Choice, another Vanna's Choice, and Basic Stitch. All of these are by Lion Brand, and they all have a very similar thickness to Mandala Gradient, so you can add these in your final rounds if you choose to sort of frame out your blanket with a solid color. To make my blanket, I'm using an 8mm size L crochet hook, but you may need a different size to achieve the pattern gauge, and I'll show you in a couple minutes how we can measure our gauge as we get started on the blanket. It's always okay to adjust your hook size and use a different size than what's listed in the pattern in order to meet the gauge. Why do we care about meeting the gauge in this blanket pattern? It's mostly because that allows us to use the yarn appropriately to create this starburst effect. So if you're not using the same yarn I am, the gauge is a little bit less important. You just want to use a hook size that coordinates well with the yarn you're using. If you love fast projects as much as I do, definitely check out the other patterns in our 3 Days to Done collection. Each of these can be finished over a long weekend, and they're really awesome for just a little gift of self-care to make something to wear yourself, or they also are perfect for gifts when you really need something last minute that feels meaningful, but you don't have a lot of time to make it. Each of the 3 Days to Done patterns includes a step-by-step video tutorial just like this, so even if you're newer to reading crochet patterns, I will walk you through each skill that you need in order to start and finish your project really quickly. We want to begin using the color that you want in the center of your star. So I'm going to be using this olive color, and I want it to go from darkest in the center out to lightest. So I'm going to grab the yarn tail that is on the outside of this ball of yarn. If you, for some reason, want to do the opposite of that and start with light and go to dark, then you're just going to reach in here to the center of your skein, pull out that yarn tail, and start your magic ring using your lighter color. To get started with a magic ring, I'm going to put my yarn tail in my non-dominant hand and then wrap it around. So this is my working strand that's connected to the ball. And then I'm just going to pull up a loop and then work a chain stitch to sort of secure it all together. And from here, I want to put 8 single crochets in this loop. In the pattern, this is called our foundation. It's not really going to count as a round. When we're looking at our star, it's not very visible to count as a round, which is why in the pattern it's called foundation and it's not called round 1. When you have 8 single crochets, it's okay to tighten down your magic loop. So I'm just gonna pull on that yarn tail, gently cinch it down, which brings my first and last single crochet together. And to join this round, I want to work under the loops of my first single crochet, pull up a loop and just pull it through. That's a slip stitch. We're not going to work into that slip stitch at any point, but that is what joins this into a circle. Now we're working in turned rounds, which means at the end of every round we join like this, we're going to turn and work in the opposite direction. Round 2 begins with 3 chains, and I like to work these fairly tightly so that they're closer to the height of my double crochets. There's my 3 chains. And then I want to skip over that slip stitch. We're not working in there, but I am going to put 2 double crochets in each single crochet. In this round, we want to create 16 total stitches. This chain 3 counts as our first stitch, and then we want to have 2 double crochets in each single crochet. So I'm placing 2 double crochets in each of these stitches around my circle. And once you've worked in each of those stitches, when you come to the very end, you should have your very last stitch, and that's kind of where the base of your chain 3 from the beginning of the round is. So we want to put 1 stitch in the base of that chain 3. What you should have at this point is 16 stitches going around, including this chain 3 turning chain. That's going to count as our first stitch. Now I want to slip stitch under this turning chain to join this into a round. All right, we have 16 stitches, and in round 2, again, we want to double the number of stitches. That begins with 3 chains, and again, we're going to put 2 double crochets in each of our stitches. I started there in the first stitch of my round with 2 double crochets, and just like in round 1, we're going to work around and then put our final stitch at the base of that chain 3. And because we're now working into a round of double crochet, when you're working that final stitch of your round, the base of your beginning chain 3 is going to be right in the top of your turning chain from the previous round. That might be way too much explanation for you. If you're just putting 2 stitches in each stitch around, you should be fine. And the way you can double check your work is to count your stitches. At the end of this round, you should have 32 double crochet. Then I want to insert my hook under that turning chain. I'm being a bit lazy with it working under there. You can also insert your hook into that 3rd chain, but I find it looks about the same either way. So I'm working under that turning chain and just slip stitching to close up my round. Now I'm going to show you how to measure your gauge, and measuring your gauge is a little less essential in projects like a blanket, but the reason it matters in this pattern is because we don't want to use way too much or way too little yarn, because then the color planning won't work out exactly how we expect. So it's a great idea at this point, at the end of round 2, just to measure your circle across. It should be right about 4 inches. If it's a lot smaller than that, I would suggest starting over again with a larger hook. If it's a lot bigger than that, I would suggest doing this one more time and just using a smaller hook. Getting this right is what's going to help ensure that you can create your entire gradient star and then that beautiful color pool around it along the edges of your blanket. In round 3, we're going to begin to shape our circle into an octagon, and that will establish the 8 sides that will eventually become the points of our star. To do that, we're going to begin with chain 2 this time, not chain 3. So chain 2, I'm turning my work so I can work in the opposite direction as my previous round. And now I'm going to double crochet in the next stitch. So that's not right here at the base of my chain 3, it's my next double crochet, the one that is next to my turning chain in the previous round. When I put that double crochet there, this is counting as our first decrease. This is a double crochet 2 together, technically, because we only chained 2 at the beginning. So that's not counting as a stitch. Therefore, this will all make sense at the end of this round, but we've just completed our first decrease. Now we want to do 2 double crochets in the next stitch. So we decreased and now we're increasing. This is what's going to form the flatter sides of our octagon. 2 double crochets in that stitch. Next, I'm going to chain 2 and then 2 double crochets in the next stitch. This creates the slightest semblance of a little corner and what is to come in our star. Next, double crochet 2 together. So like I said, that first decrease there is what we did. To work a official double crochet 2 together, I've yarned over, insert my hook in the next stitch, pull up a loop, So I have 3 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through 2, just like I was going to work a double crochet, but instead of yarning over and finishing it, I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook in the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. So it's kind of like we worked a partial double crochet and then moved on to the next stitch, worked a partial double crochet. Now when there are 3 loops on your hook, you want to yarn over and pull through all 3 of them. That is what merges 2 stitches into one, and we are calling that a decrease. In the next stitch, we want to increase, so that's 2 double crochets in the same stitch, another corner, so that's 2 chains, and then in the next stitch, 2 double crochets in the same stitch. Can you see how we've created a flat side here and a corner right here and a corner right here? So we want to repeat that sequence around our circle to create 8 sides. What that means is we've just worked our corner. We're ready to do double crochet 2 together, yarned over, pulled up a loop, and I'm pulling through 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, insert my hook in the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Now there are 3 loops and I want to yarn over and pull through all 3. Next, we're going to create our corner with 2 double crochet in the next stitch, chain 2, and 2 double crochet in the following stitch. There's another flat side. Repeat that again. Double crochet 2 together, two double crochet in the next stitch, chain 2, and 2 double crochet in the next stitch. So pause the video and repeat that pattern around your circle. The next step would be to do double crochet 2 together, 2 double crochet in the next stitch, chain 2, 2 double crochet in the next stitch, and then you just repeat that around until you get back to the beginning of this round. At the end of round 3, there's 2 very important things to note. The first is that when we're slip stitching to join this, we want to make sure we're not slip stitching into the top of our turning chain, which is what we've done previously. This, if you remember back to the beginning of this round, this chain 2 and our double crochet, they're counting as a double crochet 2 together and therefore merging 2 stitches. So it's really important that we slip stitch into the top of that stitch, which is technically the top of that first real double crochet. What that does is ensures that we have 5 stitches on this side. Even though it looks like 6 down here, we want to have 5 stitches technically to work into on the following round. This will all make more sense. I'm just trying to point out where this can go wrong. So once you have slip stitched to the top of your decrease, it should look like this. You're in the top of that first double crochet stitch and your chain 2 is kind of melting away. The second very important thing that we want to do at the end of round 3 and lots of future rounds. This is going to go on for a long time that we do this. So if you ever find your stitch count is a little bit off or you're having trouble starting the next round, this could be the mistake that happened. And that is at the end of this round and several future rounds, we are going to slip stitch into the next stitch. So that's our very last step on round 3, and that is going to set us up to continue in this octagon shape in round 4. To begin round 4, we are going to chain 2, not chain 3, we're chaining 2, and we're going to be working in the opposite direction. So I flipped my work here, and we want to work a double crochet 2 together right away. So what that means is we're going to work into the next 2 stitches with our double crochet 2 together. And if you're having trouble seeing where to insert your hook, one of the things I find is to turn it back in this direction, identify where your stitches are at. So if you look here, I've got a stitch here and a stitch here. So I can put my finger on those and say, okay, When I flip this around, because there's a lot going on there with those slip stitches, I can see there's a stitch here. I'm inserting my hook, beginning that decrease, and then to finish my double crochet 2 together, I'm working in the next stitch and then yarning over and pulling through all 3 loops on my hook. This is going to count as a double crochet 3 together. And you'll see why this matters as we get to these sides of our octagons, but that chain 2 plus our double crochet 2 together, that is now merging 3 stitches into 1. And just like I mentioned at the end of round 3, the end of round 4, it's going to be really important that we slip stitch into the top of the stitch and not into our turning chain. But I'll remind you of that in a second. Now you should have 1 double crochet left to work before you get to your corner space. The next stitch, we're going to double crochet, and in the corner chain 2 space, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets. This is what we're going to do in every corner now for a while. So 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. Next, we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. You'll start to see that each of these octagon sides is symmetrical. So I just worked my corner, double crochet in the next stitch, then we're going to do a double crochet 3 together over the center 3 stitches, and then we'll double crochet in the last stitch. That'll make this octagon side symmetrical. We started with a double crochet, then we do the decrease, then we're ending this side with a double crochet. So to do our double crochet 3 together, we're yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. It's just like a double crochet 2 together, we're just doing a 3rd step. Yarn over, insert your hook in the 2nd stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through. So now I have 3 loops on my hook, but instead of yarning over and finishing this, I want to do 1 more stitch, get involved in this little decrease party. So yarn over, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through those first 2 loops. At this point we have 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over and pull through all of those. What we've done now is merged 1, 2, 3 stitches into 1. Then, as I mentioned, in the next stitch, double crochet. Again, at our corner, we're going to do just what we did before, which is 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 more double crochet. That's all going in that chain space corner. You can see now we're perpetuating that octagon, but each side is getting a little bit longer. Now on each side of your octagon, you should have 7 double crochets and then a chain 2 space that is separating each side. Let's practice one more side together. In the first stitch, double crochet, then double crochet 3 together, which is yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2, and then a 3rd time yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2. Then when you have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. To make this side symmetrical, we want to double crochet in the next stitch, and then we've reached another corner, which means 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 more double crochet. At this point, you can repeat that sequence that we just did to create these sides around your octagon, working a decrease in the center 3 stitches, and the same thing, 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet in each corner until we finish our last corner over here toward the end of the round. When you've worked your last corner, then there should be one more double crochet to work into. And if you remember how we started this round, we did that chain 2 and then double crochet 2 together. So that's our decrease in the center. And then we did 1 double crochet. So it makes sense that then we would have 1 double crochet to finish the round, because that's what's going to make this side of our octagon symmetrical. At this point, to end this round, we want to slip stitch into the top of our decrease. So that is not this chain 2. We're not working into the top of that chain. We're working into actually the hat of that double crochet 3 together. It's actually double crochet 2 together, but because we're merging that chain in there, we're creating 3 stitches that turn into 1. Anyhow, what you should have on each side now is a total of 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you count down here and you're looking here, it won't add up to 7 because you'll see those 3 stitches. But because we decrease them, we should have 7 across on each octagon side. And as I mentioned before, it's important at the end of this round and the next several rounds to slip stitch into the next stitch to finish this round. This will position our yarn for round 5. To begin round 5, I am going to chain 2, and round 5 is exciting because this is the same round, the same concepts that we're going to use for 10 more rounds after this. So we want to create 15 total rounds in our star, and working repeats of round 5 is how we're going to get there. Our next step in round 5 is to work a double crochet 2 together over the first 2 stitches. So this is that slip stitch, and my next stitch, I'm going to work part of my decrease, and then the next stitch, the second part of my decrease. And then when I yarn over and pull through 3, this little hat right here is considered the top of our double crochet 3 together. So just like before, because we chained 2 and then did double crochet 2 together, this is counting as our double crochet 3 together for this octagon side. Now we want to double crochet in each double crochet to the corner. So we've got only 2 in this case. We're just working into each stitch to the corner. And when we get to the corner, we're going to put 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets. These corners are what are going to actually create the points in our star. So you should see them get pointier and pointier as you progress through the rounds. Now, if you're reading the written pattern, you're going to see that it says double crochet in each stitch until there's 1 before the decrease. So it's worth talking about how we identify where that decrease is. As I'm looking at this side and noticing what I did in the previous round, we know that these stitches were part of the corner, and so were these, which leaves us with the double crochet we did before the decrease and the double crochet we did after the decrease. So our decrease hat is this right in the center. It should be the center of your side always, and the way you can notice it is it looks like a bunch of strands of yarn stacked on top of each other, and then that hat, the V that's right on top of that, that is technically our decrease stitch. So when I'm working this, I like to look for, first of all, it's in the center of the side, so that's helpful to know what area we're looking in, but then I'm looking for these strands of yarn that are stacked on top of each other, and I know that that's my decrease stitch. So we want to double crochet in each stitch until we have 1 stitch before that decrease. This is all going to make a lot more sense after you work a couple of these rounds. It's very intuitive, and I think you'll find this to be very relaxing, actually. I made my entire star just watching reality TV one night and it was like a vacation. So now I have 1 stitch remaining before my decrease. That means that I'm ready to work a double crochet 3 together, and that should always be worked over the center 3 stitches of your side. So that's 1, working into the next stitch, that's my decrease, stitch 2, and 3. Okay, yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops, creates a decrease, and then we want to double crochet in each stitch until the corner. As I mentioned with the previous round, our octagon sides should always be symmetrical. So in this case, we did a corner, 2 double crochet, and then we did 2 double crochet before our decrease. There's the decrease, and then we're doing 2 double crochets after the decrease. And then in my next corner, 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 more double crochet. Let's work one more side just so we make sure we've got it. We're going to double crochet in each stitch until 1 remains before the decrease. This is going to be the same on every side, so it's 2 stitches until the decrease on each of my octagon sides right now. So I just worked 1, 2, and then here's my decrease stitch. You can see those strands of yarn stacked up, so I'm stopped 1 before that. That's my signal to double crochet 3 together. 1, 2, 3. 4 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through all 4, and then double crochet in each stitch to the corner. So again, it's 2 double crochets, and then I want to, as always, put 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochet all in my corner space. To finish round 5, you are going to repeat that same sequence we did on these sides on each of the remaining sides. So you're going to double crochet in each stitch until you get to 1 before the decrease stitch, double crochet 3 together, and then double crochet in each stitch to the corner, and then put your double crochet, 2 chains, and double crochet in the corner. So let's work the remaining sides, and we'll meet back here when we just have this little bit of the first side remaining. As you're coming upon the end of your round and you've worked your last corner, then we want to double crochet in each stitch until we get to the end of the round. So in this case, it's 2 stitches at the end of round 5. And it's important here not to work into this stitch. It can almost look like another stitch. Right here, it kind of looks like an open space, but technically that's where our chain 2 was going, so it's not actually another stitch. And if at any point you're confused by where to work, you can look at how many stitches were worked at the beginning of the round at the edge of this side. It was 2 double crochets here right after that decrease, so we want to have 2 double crochets here. That's what creates that symmetrical octagon side. That's just a little tip. I don't want you to be confused and not know what to do next. I really don't like that feeling, and I want to help you avoid it. So now I want to slip stitch into the top of my double crochet 3 together right here at the beginning of the round, and that is joining my round, and then 1 slip stitch into the next stitch. Now my yarn is positioned for round 6, and for round 6 through 15, you are going to repeat what we just did in round 5. And what you'll start to see is these little points will start to develop, and it looks so beautiful, especially as your yarn colors begin to change. It's just so fun. It feels like you're just kind of watching like a cool kaleidoscope develop. I'm going to start round 6 with you just to make sure we're off on the right track, but you already know the skills because we just did them in round 5. That's the same thing you're going to do in the next 10 rounds. So you want to get to 15 total rounds. To begin round 6, I'm chaining 2, turning to work in the opposite direction. As before, I want to start with a double crochet 2 together. So I'm skipping over that slip stitch and working in the next 2 stitches. So that has created what we're going to call a double crochet 3 together. Now we want to double crochet in each stitch till the corner. And if you'll notice, now we have 1, to 3 stitches. In the previous round we had 2. So this is how we're going to watch this grow. Each round you'll have 1 more stitch to work into after your decrease than you did before. So in this case, it's 3 double crochet to get to my corner. In the corner, 2 double crochet, 2 chains, and 2 more double crochet. On the next octagon side, we're going to double crochet in each stitch until 1 remains before our decrease. I see my decrease, it's right in the center there. It has that stacked look where we merged all these strands of yarn into 1 stitch. So I want to double crochet in each stitch until I have 1 remaining before that decrease. So in this case, in round 6, we're doing 3 double crochets. Now I've got 1 remaining before my decrease, which means I'm ready to do double crochet 3 together. 1, 2, and 3. 4 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. That creates my double crochet 3 together, and then double crochet in each stitch to the corner. So if you remember, we started this side with 3 double crochets. It should be the same on the other side of the decrease. 1, 2, and 3. At this point, we would put 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 more double crochets in the corner, and then repeat the same sequence on each side around our octagon, finishing up this round by slip stitching into the top of our double crochet 3 together, just as we did in round 5. And like I said, we're going to repeat this now to create a total of 15 double crochet rounds. So I've just started 6. We want to do 10 more, including round 6. We want to get to 15 total rounds, and that will form that beautiful star at the center of your blanket. I hope it's okay that I'm popping between different blankets here. They're all just so beautiful. I have to show them off to you. Isn't this just the most mesmerizing thing you've ever seen? I wanted to share what it looks like when I've finished up my first skein of yarn. So you can see here that I've got just a little bit of this first skein left, but I have about half of a round left to finish on my 15th round. And we want to complete 15 rounds in our star before we begin our next step. So I am just going to switch over to my new hot pink color for the rest of round 15 and then for the rest of my blanket. I'm just attaching it now where I'm finishing off with my first skein, and I want to be starting at the lighter color. So I am going to pull this out here, find this yarn tail, and then we're going to start from lightest and go outward and finish up with the most saturated color. What is so cool about these 2 colorways in particular is that the end of this burgundy color, when it turns to light pink here, is almost identical to the light pink that's in this colorway. So it's actually a very seamless transition. And instead of tying a knot, I am just going to begin my double crochet with my old color and then just complete the last yarn over with my new color. Of course, you can tie a knot too. Either way definitely works. This way I do have to kind of tighten down my yarn tails a little bit and hang on to them as I work the next couple stitches. But at this point, wherever you run out of yarn in your first color, you're just going to switch over, start using your second color to finish up the rest of your, probably you're gonna be around round 15. It just depends a little bit on your gauge and exactly how many yards are included in your ball of yarn, because it varies a little bit from ball to ball. So you just want to end up with 15 rounds, even if that means that you're finishing up the last bit of your star using your new color. How beautiful are these stars? Aren't you just loving it? Please don't be shy about sharing photos or videos of your project in progress because we would love to admire your stitches. Please remember to tag at Make and Do Crew so that we can see what you're up to. Now I am 15 rounds into my star, which means it is time to start to square off this 8-point star into a 4-sided blanket. The first thing we're going to do is mark 4 of our star corners, and that's going to help orient us to what is going to eventually become a blanket corner. It's easy to get lost in a sea of corners, so the stitch markers are going to help us stay oriented. The first thing we want to check, once you're sure you have 15 rounds, is to make sure you have the first round, what we're counting as our first round, it's double crochet here, that the right side of that is facing up, so the front of those double crochet stitches, and you can verify that because the last round that you work, the 15th round, should also be the front. That'll just help us stay on the right track here. Now, once you know that your right side is facing up, if you're right-handed, you are going to move clockwise around your star and put stitch markers in the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th corners. So when I say that, I mean the 1st, that's the 2nd, the 3rd is right here, and then we would skip the 4th right here. Then this is the 5th, skip the 6th, and then here I am at the 7th. So the way that this looks then, if you were to zoom out, which is hard to do with a blanket on camera, but you should have 4 markers now, and they should be across from each other. That's the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th corners, counting clockwise because I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, then here's your live loop. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but here's where we stopped in our last round. If you're left-handed, you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to count counterclockwise. So then you're going to put one in your 1st corner, counterclockwise, your 3rd corner, your 5th, and your 7th corner. You're just counting in this direction as a lefty. Right-handed, you're counting in this direction. That's going to allow the rest of the instructions to just remain the same, whether you're right or left-handed. You're just going to be kind of driving in the direction that you need to drive, and everyone will have the same mile markers with their stitch markers. So now in round 16, I am going to begin to show you how we're going to eliminate and sort of smooth out the points that don't have a stitch marker in them and continue to accentuate the points that do have a stitch marker, because each of these marked stitches, these are going to become the blanket corners. Right now, I still have the right side facing. So this is the round I just finished up, round 15. And I want to point out that in round 15, just like all those other star rounds, we do want to end it by slip stitching into the next stitch. So I slip stitched to join it, and then one more slip stitch, because that is again going to position our yarn correctly for round 16 when we begin to square off our blanket. To begin round 16, I am going to chain 3, and we're introducing a new stitch here, and that is treble crochet. So some people call it triple crochet, treble crochet. The concept here is that it's just a little taller than a double crochet. These 3 chains are counting as the first leg of our decrease, just as they have all along when we've been doing those double crochet 3 together. Now we're going to do a treble crochet 3 together. So that starts with 3 chains, and then as before, I'm going to work into the next stitch over. With a treble crochet, we want to yarn over twice. So I've yarned over, I've got 2 extra yarn overs there. Now I'm going to work into my next stitch, just as we have been all along. And then I want to yarn over and pull up 1 loop, yarn over and pull up another loop and pull through. So it's the same thing we did before, it's just a little taller this time because it has 1 more yarn over. And to complete this treble crochet 3 together, we need to do it in the next stitch. So I'm going to do 1 yarn over, 2 yarn overs, insert my hook in the next stitch, pull up a loop, grab the yarn and pull through, grab the yarn and pull through. Now I have the 3 loops on my hook, and I'm ready to yarn over and pull through all 3 of them. As you can see, this is quite a tall stitch. But that's because we're in a little bit of a valley here and we want to raise it up because we're trying to smooth out this point. So that is a treble crochet 3 together, and we're going to use those again in the valleys as we progress. From here, my next step is to do a treble crochet. So I'm going to do yarn over again, and then insert my hook, pull up a loop. At this point, there's 4 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through the first 2. Yarn over and pull through the first 2. Yarn over and pull through those 2. So it's 3 steps like that. Now, after we've done 1 treble, we're going to do 4 double crochet. 2, 3, and 4. This is actually, even though it looks a little intimidating, this is a great pattern to practice your pattern reading skills as you go along with the video, because you'll see that the pattern instructions are really no different than what I'm saying out loud. If you were to look at the pattern and read it out loud with the abbreviations, you would hear exactly this: 1 treble crochet, 4 double crochet, then 4 half double crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next, we're going to do 4 single crochet. 1, 2, 3, and 4. In our marked corner, we want to put a single crochet, chain 3, and another single crochet. It is going to be helpful to continue to move your markers to the new stitch you created, just to monitor these corners. It will get clearer and clearer which are our blanket corners as we progress, but for the first several rounds, I suggest moving it up so it's very, very obvious what's a blanket corner and what is a star corner that we're trying to melt away. Now I want to explain something about how the pattern is written. You'll see that in each of these rounds, we see first blanket side to begin. So that is just speaking to the fact that this is one blanket side. This is going to become a flat blanket side between these 2 markers, but because of the nature of where our round begins and ends, we have to start a partial round on side 1, and then we're going to progress side 2, side 3, and side 4 of our blanket, and then at the end of the round, we're going to do side 1 again to complete it. So you'll see this all mapped out in the pattern, but this is what it's referring to when we're talking about the sides. At this point, we're talking about the blanket sides. And now what you're going to see us do is work a very specific pattern where we are building in this direction, growing up to here, and then reversing the exact same stitches to make a symmetrical trail leading down to this corner. I'll explain it stitch by stitch as we go, but I wanted to give you an idea of what we're about to do. And once we have practiced this, I am going to set you loose to copy and paste those same skills to side 3 and side 4, because it's the exact same thing. You're going to do the same thing between the markers in order to sort of shave these points off and build a blanket side. With all of that said, here is how you're going to do the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th blanket sides. To begin, we've already completed this corner, so now we're going to do 4 single crochets. After that, we'll do 4 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next, 4 double crochets. So you might be noticing here that we're starting at the shortest stitches single crochets, and then we're progressing, we're sort of stair-stepping up. Half double crochets are a little taller, and then our double crochets are a little taller than that, and then next will come treble crochet. In this round we're doing 4 of each, so 4 single crochets, 4 half double crochets, 4 double crochets. Now we're going to do 1 treble, yarn over again, insert that hook, pull up a loop, grab the yarn and pull through 2, grab the yarn and pull through 2 again, grab the yarn and pull through 2. There's our treble. This probably looks familiar. If you remember, we've always worked that decrease over the stitch before the previous decrease, that decrease stitch, and then the next stitch. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. We're going to work a treble crochet 3 together. So that's yarn over twice, pull up a loop, pull through the first 2, pull through the next 2, and then again, yarn over twice, pull up a loop, go through the first 2, go through the first 2 again. Now we have now done that in 2 stitches. We need to do it one more time. 2 yarn overs, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the first 2, and then we have 4 loops on our hook, and we're yarning over and pulling through all 4. So that is our treble crochet 3 together. Next, we want to do a treble crochet, 1 of them in the next stitch. Now 4 double crochet, 2. This is when you'll see we start reversing what we did to build toward that corner, and then we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side of this star point. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 half double crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we should have 4 stitches left along the side. We want to do 4 single crochet. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, part of the reason why we mark our corners is because we're going to treat this corner differently than we did this corner. This one we want to continue to stay defined. This one we kind of want to go away, and eventually we're going to stop treating it like a corner altogether. So in this one, we're now going to single crochet, chain 1, and then single crochet. Now, everything that we just did on this slope, we're going to do right here on this slope, which means we want to single crochet 4 times, then half double crochet 4 times, now double crochet 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 treble crochet, and now we're at that valley where we want to work our treble crochet 3 together. The way that we're sure about that is we still want to decrease over the stitch before our previous decrease, then that previous decrease stitch, and then the next stitch. So that's 2 yarn overs, pull through 2, pull through 2, 2 yarn overs, pull through 2, pull through 2. We got 3 loops on our hook, 2 yarn overs, pull through 2, pull through 2, 4 loops on the hook, and we want to yarn over and pull through all 4. Treble crochet in the next stitch. You see how even though this seems like a lot to decipher in a pattern, it is quite easy to memorize because you're doing the same thing over and over again. So we've got that 1 treble crochet. I bet you can infer what comes next, we're going to move to double crochet because it's a little bit shorter than treble crochet. We want to do 4 doubles. There's 4. And then 4 half doubles. And then end this section with 4 single crochet. This is what that should look like. You've kind of blended a little bit, and this is going to get really cool as your yarn switches colors because you'll start to see even more definition that contrasts with how geometric this star is. Now we're at the next corner and we're going to do the same thing we did in our first marked corner, and that is a single crochet, chain 3, and then single crochet again. And like before, I'm going to move that stitch marker up so that it is there to remind me what's going on in the next round. We are now on side 3, and we want to repeat what we just did on side 2, the exact same sloping thing up to the point. You're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in this corner that we want to disappear, and then work down to your next marked corner, and then you're going to repeat all of that again on side 4. As you get back to side 1 here, what you'll see is that the instructions are extremely similar to what we've done on sides 2, 3, and 4. You're doing the exact same thing as you come here, the same single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in this corner, and then very similar thing right here. This is one of those tricky things about pattern writing where it actually looks a lot more complicated than it is. You could freak out when you see that partial row, how to finish the round thing, but just take my word for it, it's the exact same thing. You're doing the same thing that you've just done. And we can each work this round, finish it up, and I will meet you back here to work round 17. To finish up this round, when we have worked our last treble crochet, we are going to slip stitch into the top of our decrease from the beginning of the round. So although this is a little bit taller stitch, the top of the decrease looks just like it has all throughout. So we're working under that set of 2 loops and slip stitching to finish it off. Now we're actually going to work in the other direction, but we don't have to slip stitch a second time like we have been. We're done doing that part now. Round 17 is going to begin with 3 chains, and that's counting as our first double crochet. And now we're going to basically do what we did before. The stitch counts are just slightly different, but we are going to be working from, in this case, from taller stitches to shorter stitches as we work toward this corner. And because it's not marked, it's one of the ones that we're trying to essentially erase. So this counts as my first double crochet, so I don't need to work into that first stitch. Instead, I want to work my next stitch into the next available stitch here, and that is going to be a double crochet as well. And then I want to work a total of 4 double crochets over the next 4 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next, we're going to do 4 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 6 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we have gotten to our what is becoming a less of a corner. In the pattern, we're calling this a chain 1 space, and that is because if you remember in the previous round, we did a single crochet and a chain 1 and a single crochet in that corner. So now we have a chain 1 space where our star corner used to be. So we're going to just put 1 single crochet into that chain 1 space, and now we're going to reverse a lot of what we just did here, starting with 6 single crochets. So if you were to count the number of single crochets that you have starting from over here where you finish that last half double crochet, you should have 13 single crochets before you transition now to 4 half double crochets. And now, because when we began this, we were kind of mid side here, so now we have all the way to go to get to our corner. So we are going to work 9 double crochets. Here are my 9 double crochets. We're going to follow that up with 4 half double crochets. This section of squaring off the star is really just undulating. We're doing tall stitches to short stitches to tall stitches to short stitches. The number of stitches of each type will change as we progress, but we're just switching between the tallest stitch to the shortest stitch and back and forth. So now to finish up, before we get to the stitch marker, I need to work 6 single crochets. Now this is where we want to keep that corner really well established, which means we're going to put a single crochet and then chain 3 and another single crochet. Again, I'm just moving my stitch marker to that chain 3 space that we just created. And this is going to sound familiar because now we're doing essentially a very similar thing to what we did from here to here. We're going to kind of do the same thing from here to here. We're just smoothing out those valleys. So we'll start with 6 single crochet. So that is 6 single crochet. Then we're going to do 4 half double crochet. And now 9 double crochet. Is this sounding familiar? Is it ringing a bell? We just did this over our last valley. And then 4 half double crochets. And 6 single crochet. And as we did previously in our non-marked corner, we're just going to put a single crochet in there. And you can see how we're sort of repeating the same process here. So we worked from this non-marked corner. You remember that stitch sequence that we did over to a marked corner. And then we did a very similar version of it over here to the non-marked corner. And then we're just going to repeat what we did before from the non-marked corner to the marked corner. And it's basically just little symmetrical rows along each side here. And what you should be seeing is that with each round, the blanket sides, the parts between the markers, are getting just slightly flatter. That is what's going to square this off. So now that you have the skills needed to finish up round 17, you're just going to repeat that sequence that we just did. It's all in the pattern, and I promise it's not that scary to read. Just read it out loud to yourself. Look at the glossary with the abbreviations and just read to yourself. 4 half double crochet, 9 double crochet. It's just like I have been narrating to you. You can do that same thing to yourself as you finish up this round. I am now going to finish up round 17 and let you do the same. And then for round 18, it is just the exact same things we've been doing. It's just with slightly different numbers of single crochets and half double crochets and all of that. So look at the pattern for round 18. I feel like I don't need to show you exactly on video because it's a little slow and tedious to watch, I know, and it's all the exact same thing that we've just been practicing in rounds 16 and 17. So let's finish up 17 ourselves, do 18, and I'll meet you back here for round 19 where we can check in. While it is also very similar to what we've been doing, I just want to make sure we're all on the right track. End of round 18. Isn't it so fun to watch the colors unfolding? I think it's just so pretty how they're framing the star, and each round is a little bit different. So this is the end of my round 18, and what you should have going on here is a slope upward to our corner that is not a corner anymore. It's becoming a blanket side, and then we still have a sharp corner here in our marked stitch. Again, we're sloping up and eventually eliminating this bump here. And the way we achieved this in round 18 was just working treble crochets near the corner marked stitches. This is a bunch of treble crochets and a bunch of treble crochets here. And then we progressively work shorter stitches as we come up here to this corner that we're melting in. And then we reverse that, ending, or not ending, but arriving at this corner by way of more treble crochets, and we're repeating that around. So the same concept is going to apply for the next few rounds, and the stitch numbers are different because we are trying to work our tall stitches where we need to build out the corners, and our short stitches when we're near these points that we're trying to eliminate. So check the pattern for the exact number of treble crochets, double crochets, half double crochets, and single crochets to work for rounds 19 and 20, but I am fully confident in you because you have now learned every skill that you need in order to work these rounds. It's just a matter of counting the stitches, and I promise you we are almost done with this counting part. I know it's a little bit more concentration than was required in the star, but I promise it will be worth it. And then we will have a step that I'll explain that's a lot more cruise control crochet if that's what you would like after we finish squaring up our star. After round 20, your blanket should be looking fairly square. You can see here that I've still got a little bit of a curve here over my star corner, but for the most part, it really has clear differentiated corners, and you probably have a pile of yarn that looks something like this. So this yarn tends to sort of come apart as you're pulling from the inside of the ball. So we have enough yarn left, if you've been meeting the gauge, in order to add one more round in this color. You may have a little more or a little less than I end up with. It's all just dependent on exactly how many yards were in your balls of yarn and then how tight or loose you've been crocheting. Typically, gauge doesn't matter a ton in a blanket pattern, but in this pattern it's more important just because we're trying to use the yarn in a really specific way. So knowing that we have enough yarn to create one more round in this color, we want to fully square this off. And we're going to work round 21 in the same way we've worked the last few rounds, where we're working some stitches to the corner, and then again we're sort of beginning with treble crochet in that corner and then graduating to single crochet and then going back to taller and taller stitches until we end with treble crochet over here. It's the same thing we've been doing in the previous rounds, and at the end of this round you most likely will not have a ton of yarn left. So that will be the point where you can either decide this is a great blanket size for me and I'm ready to be done. That's the 3-day version. If you are loving this and you want to create an even bigger blanket, I'll show you how to do that in the next few steps. One thing I want to point out, because it does apply to round 21 and the last few rounds too, is that you'll see in the pattern that those turning chains, the chain 4 at the beginning of the round, it says it counts as the first treble crochet. The reason that's really important is that because that chain 4 is counting as my first stitch, it should be stacking right on top of the turning chain from the previous round. And then we're not working in our first stitch right here, we're working in the second stitch with our treble crochet and then proceeding from there. So I just want to say that in case you've had any stitch count issues with this first little section, that's a place where it can go wrong, just making sure that you're not adding an extra stitch right there, but instead working in the second stitch. So now that we have confirmed that sort of retroactively, let's go ahead and follow round 21 in the pattern, and we'll come back here and see how much yarn we have left and decide whether you want to add another skein or finish up. At the end of round 21, you want to slip stitch into the top of your chain 2 from the beginning of the round, because that counted as our first stitch. And now, if you are working in only 2 balls of yarn, you are officially done with your crocheting. I want to show you how much yarn I have left right here, because as long as you have been meeting the pattern gauge, you should have something like this left. It's not enough to actually work another round, but if you do want to proceed with adding one more color section on here, then you can just keep using this yarn, and then when you run out of it, switch to your new color. But if you are done now, you want to finish off, you can just fasten your yarn off here. Weave in the couple of yarn tails you have left, because there really should not be many. And then you're going to want to skip to the blocking instructions. Blocking is going to make a really big difference on this pattern, because you may still have the slightest bit of waviness in your blanket, and blocking is going to help all your stitches sort of get organized and everything look as smooth and tidy as possible. Now, if you do want to add one more color, I suggest working from the darkest color to the lightest color on your 3rd ball of yarn. That's going to allow you to continue this oscillating effect between lights and darks. So we'll add a bit more dark color here and then end with the color fading into the lightest color in your ball. I'll show you now how we want to work round 22, and the subsequent rounds, all of them will be worked the same if you want to extend the size of your blanket. To begin round 22, I am going to just continue with the yarn that I have attached, because I have a little bit more left. And we're going to start with 3 chains. That's going to count as our first double crochet in this round and all our future rounds. And then, as we've done all along, we're not going to work into our first stitch, because this counts as a stitch. So then we just want to double crochet in the first stitch and double crochet in each stitch to the corner. In the corner, I'm going to work 2 double crochets and then 3 chains. We're doing 3 chains here to try to mimic the openness of all of these previous rounds, the corners. So we want just a little bit more space in there, because we're only working a double crochet. So it's not quite as tall. So I've got 2 double crochets, a chain 3, and then 2 more double crochets. And then I would continue down this side, putting a double crochet in each stitch. And this is how the rest of our rounds are going to go using our new color then. We're just going to double crochet in each stitch, then in the corner work 2 double crochets, a chain 3, and 2 more double crochets, and then continue double crocheting in each stitch. Again, in the corner, 2 double crochet, chain 3, 2 double crochet. And you're gonna work like that all the way around. Slip stitch to the top of this chain 3 to join, and then turn and repeat the same process in the opposite direction. So the entire blanket is worked in turned rounds. We've been doing that all along, so it should be habit at this point to flip your work at the end of each round, and each of your blanket sides should be growing by 4 stitches per side, because we're adding 2 stitches over here and 2 stitches over here in each corner. So now you have mastered your counting section, and like I promised, you're ready for some cruise control crochet, just working back and forth in turned rounds, double crochet, working through your last color of yarn. Hold up, I tried that 3rd ball of Mandala Gradient and was not happy with how it looked. The colors were just clashing with the beautiful colors that were already in the blanket. So after I finished using most of that ball of yarn, I ended up tearing it all out, and now I'm coming back here with 2 different options that I'm going to try. The colors I'm going to be experimenting here are Basic Stitch, and this one is called Steel Blue. This is Heartland yarn, and the color is Glacier Bay. Both of these are similar in weight to Mandala Gradient, and I am going to experiment with each of them for several double crochet rounds to sort of frame out my star and my stripes in the blanket, and then I will decide which one I think looks the best, and I'll come back here and show you what it's like and let you know what I recommend. Ta-da! I ended up going with the basic stitch option just because I liked the way the color worked with the existing colors better. Both would have worked great as far as the thickness goes, so whatever thicker worsted weight yarn you find that complements your colors, I would say go for that one. Of course, if you want to keep going with the gradient effect, you can do that too. I just wanted to show you what it looked like after I added 3 rounds of double crochet here. And if I wanted an even larger blanket, I would just keep going, repeating this exact same round, increasing in the corners, and that could go on to infinity. So you can make a very big blanket if that's what you would like. I'm going to stop here after 3 rounds, which means it's time to fasten off my yarn. I'm just going to pull that loop through, and typically I would weave in my ends before blocking, but on this project I'm going to do the blocking first. Now, I realize that not everyone has a blocking board available. I did not own one of these for my first few decades of crocheting, but I have to say in a project like this, they can be pretty helpful. So if you've had your eye on one and you're thinking you might want to buy it, I would say now would be a good time to invest, mostly because we're going to want to pin this blanket down in order to really smooth out any wrinkles that are existing along the edges. And part of the way we're going to do that is by pinning the sides down along each edge, but we're also going to pin the star a bit. What you may find is that the star needs to stretch and open up just a little bit in order to remove any of the waves in the outer edge. So I'm going to get that started now, and I will come back here and show you what I'm talking about. I've started by pinning down the edges of my blanket, and my blanket is even a little bit too big for my blocking board, so I'm focusing on pinning along the last round that I did in the mandala yarn. I'm not too focused on my extra rounds because I can always hit those with a little bit of steam, but what we really want to smooth out is any waves that exist where we were squaring off our blanket. So once all of your blanket edges are pinned down in that way, I want to show you how to open up the star a little bit. And to do that, I am just kind of pulling it a little bit to make sure that it's as open as possible. And then I'm adding some pins like this in my star corners, and that's going to allow some of that stretch to happen in the middle of the blanket as well. What I've found, if you only pin along the edges, is that most of the stretch is happening then at the edges. And if you think about if you were stretching a body part or something, you wouldn't want to just stretch the bottom of your leg and the top of your leg. You'd want to stretch your leg throughout. And so in order to do that and really open this up to smooth out any wrinkles throughout, we want to get the star open, and pinning it like this gives it some support to open up. So once you have pinned your star open like that, you're ready to aim a little bit of steam at the entire blanket. And I just want to offer, if you don't have a blocking board, you can try some different things to pin your blanket down. One thing that can work is any other piece of foam that you have. If you have something that came in packaging, even a piece of styrofoam, that could work. And I've also just used a towel on top of my carpet. So the rug pad underneath is sort of working as my foam blocking board. I'm not necessarily recommending this because I obviously don't think that a lot of heat and water aimed at your carpet is a good idea. I'm just saying I've done it before, so do that at your own risk. I am now aiming my steamer at my blanket. There's obviously a lot of the blanket here off camera that you can't see, but I am going to steam the entire thing. You can use a steamer for this. You can also use an iron that has steam functionality. You just want to keep the heat source from touching your yarn. If you're using a man-made fiber like I am, that heat can actually melt the yarn. So you want to start out a little further away, kind of test out how close you can actually get. But adding this hot water is going to help all of our stitches open up and smooth out any waves that we have remaining in our blanket. Once you have blocked the entire blanket, if you have the time available, I would suggest just leaving the blanket pinned to the blocking board overnight so everything can really settle in place. Then you just want to weave in any remaining ends, and there really should not be many thanks to our self-striping yarn. I hope you love your new Supernova blanket. Definitely check out the other patterns in the 3 Days to Done collection for more fast projects just like this. And hit subscribe so you don't miss our future free and easy crochet tutorials.